Look, isn't that lovely? The pages, like flower petals or butterflies.
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we'll be counting down our picks for the top 20 books that have been banned.
One of the first things he asked in a letter that he wrote to me was, do you know where my copy of The Catcher of the Rye is?
For this list, we're looking at books that have been banned from sale and distribution at some point for a wide variety of reasons. Let us know in the comments which you'll definitely be reading next. Number 20, Fahrenheit 451, Ray Bradbury. It's ironic that a book expressly about the perils of banning books has found itself on the banned reading list numerous times. Or maybe that's exactly what Bradbury was going for. The novel follows Guy Montag, whose job it is to burn books en masse. He initially believes in the cause, but upon doing some reading himself, starts to grow disillusioned with the relentless censorship of literature's great works.
What are you doing, Linda?
It's been banned by numerous schools and counties in the United States since its publication, though there has been plenty of success in getting it unbanned. Still, imagine reading Fahrenheit 451 and then deciding that the regime is right and books should be destroyed.
No.
Number 19, The Diary of a Young Girl, Anne Frank. This genuine diary is one of the most important books in existence for studying the Second World War and Nazi Germany's persecution of Jewish people, which is why it's abominable that anybody thought to ban it.
My name is Anna Frank. I am 13 years old. I was born in Germany, but since my family is Jewish, we emigrated to Holland when Hitler came to power.
But it has perhaps one of the most bizarre reasons behind an attempted banning, as a school in Alabama tried to ban it in the 1980s because it was, quote, a real downer. And yes, that is a real quote. Others have attempted to ban it for alleged explicit content, as Frank wrote openly about her sexuality. It's truly heinous to try and stop anybody from learning about this part of history, particularly history as told by those who suffered the most. Number 18, A Farewell to Arms, Ernest Hemingway. Though he's one of the most famous American writers of all time, Hemingway's been censored across the U.S. The Sun Also Rises has been censored in Boston and California, while Hemingway self-censored profanity in For Whom the Bell Tolls. A Farewell to Arms, however, while also being banned in Boston, was banned in Italy in the first half of the 20th century.
You are late, baby. How is it up there? Quiet? You nearly missed the party. But it is very dull.
That's because it's a fictionalized account of Hemingway's experience fighting on the Italian front during the First World War, and it portrays Italy's ultimate defeat much too accurately for the likes of the Italian censors at the time. It wasn't until after World War II that the book officially made its way to Italian shores.
What are you carabinieri doing in the yards?
Looking for stragglers.
What do you do with them?
Send them back to fight invaders.
Number 17, Of Mice and Men, John Steinbeck.
Stuart, what you want? Where are we going?
Get away from here.
Because of its short length, readability, and the fact that it tackles the Great Depression, a major chapter of American history, Of Mice and Men has long been required reading in high schools around the world. So you may be surprised to learn that it's one of the most challenged books in history, frequently earning ire because of its subject matter.
I ain't saying he's bright. He ain't. But he's a damn good worker.
Steinbeck's handling of race, including his portrayal of racism, as well as the infamous treatment of Curly's wife, are often cited. Even in the UK, there's been some talk of taking Of Mice and Men out of the school curriculum. Steinbeck's much longer Depression-era novel, The Grapes of Wrath, has also been censored in the US.
I thought you would mad at me, dude.
No.
Number 16, Lady Chatterley's Lover, D.H. Lawrence. In the Western world, there was a turning point in the 20th century where the censorship of literature was concerned. And that turning point was a landmark obscenity trial against Penguin Books.
We shouldn't disturb the birds.
I'm sure they'll be fine.
Though Lady Chatterley's Lover was banned across the English-speaking world, the trial happened in the UK in 1960, and a jury ultimately ruled in favor of Penguin, leaving the publisher free to publish not only Lady Chatterley's Lover, but a myriad of other obscene works. But what was all the fuss about in the first place? Well, Lawrence's novel chronicles the explicit extramarital affair of Lady Chatterley, and let's just say it doesn't shy away from the details.
Coming, darling!
Number 15, Lord of the Flies, William Golding. You may not know that Lord of the Flies was written as a response to popular adventure novels about the endeavors of upper-class young boys who flourish when stranded on a desert island, but it was.
Sir, I found water.
Today it's often derided as Golding glorifying the British class system instead of being a criticism of it, as the boys quickly descend into violence and brutality. But not only has the violence proven an issue, so has the profane language some of the boys use, not to mention their archaic attitudes towards women and minorities.
Come on, hunters! Billy's the monster!
In the end, these contemporary attitudes are the things Golding is criticizing, but that hasn't stopped people from repeatedly challenging the novel. Despite how many times it's been challenged, the book actually hasn't been banned outright or removed from school curricula as often as you might think, which is why it only lands here on our list.
Come on, let's get out of this kindergarten.
Number 14, To Kill a Mockingbird, Harper Lee. Also a hallmark of any high school reading list, To Kill a Mockingbird is generally regarded as a cutting portrayal of systemic racism in the Deep South. It follows lawyer Atticus Finch and his attempts to get a black man, Tom Robinson, cleared of the wrongful charge of assaulting a white woman.
This court's now in session. Everybody rise.
But in recent years, it's gotten some negative attention for Lee's portrayal of race, getting itself censored in places as far apart as Edinburgh, Scotland, and Mississippi.
You've sworn to tell the whole truth. Will you do it?
But people have consistently tried to ban it ever since it was first published, generally for daring to portray racism and assault in any capacity, regardless of what the book actually says about those things.
Gentlemen, this jury is dismissed.
Number 13, The Picture of Dorian Gray, Oscar Wilde. Sadly, Oscar Wilde's obscenity trial in the 1890s didn't end as positively as the one 70 years later against Penguin. The Picture of Dorian Gray, Wilde's only novel, follows the decades-long life of its titular character, who gains eternal youth and beauty by cursing his portrait to take the toll of his sinful life.
Is that really how I look? It's just so lifelike.
Better than life.
The thing the censors of Victorian society didn't like was Dorian's gay proclivities, as he's sexually involved with numerous men.
I hardly think that...
The novel was used as key evidence in the trial against Wilde, and he was sent to prison for 2 years in 1895. It wasn't until 2011 that the full uncensored text was published as Wilde intended. Number 12, The Color Purple, Alice Walker. This period novel was published in the 1980s and right away got on the wrong side of many school boards. Though The Color Purple counts race among its main themes, the biggest problem seen by the people trying to ban it was its sexual content. It's definitely a dark novel largely about trauma, but it also focuses on the relationship between two women, Celie and Shug Avery. In short, The Color Purple has just about everything you can think of to upset the kind of people who spend their time trying to ban books. But it remains a brilliant, if bleak, masterpiece.
I was gonna miss you.
I was gonna miss you too, Miss Celie.
Number 11, Ulysses, James Joyce.
Cold, domed room of the tower waits. I will not sleep there when this night comes.
Arguably the most important Irish novel ever written, Ulysses faced so many legal challenges and trials for its obscene content that the entire saga has been dubbed the Joyce Wars. Yes, really. One of the most notable incidents was an obscenity trial in the US in 1921, which ruled against Joyce and resulted in years of American authorities burning every copy that made its way across the Atlantic.
But he was to spend the next 14 years fighting the censors for its publication in Britain and America.
This is one case where even today, Ulysses certainly is obscene, but it's Joyce's refusal to flinch away from all of the gross parts of ordinary human life that helped make Ulysses a classic. But maybe don't do that on a public beach.
I can't help it if I'm young still, can I? It's a wonder I'm not an old, shriveled hag before my time.
Number 10, A Clockwork Orange, Anthony Burgess. This novel is certainly more famous for its movie adaptation, directed by Stanley Kubrick, which somehow managed to be significantly more controversial than the book it's based on.
I've taught you much, my little droogies. Now tell me what you had in mind, Georgie boy.
But that's not to say the book didn't upset people too. Though its graphic violence is somewhat masked by Burgess's obtuse fictional slang language, it's still a horrific book.
Let's get her, boys!
Interestingly, though, the final chapter, in which Alex sees the error of his ways, was refused publication in America because they thought Americans would prefer all the violence. It was censored basically for the opposite reason every other book is, bizarrely.
Stop it, please! I beg you! It's a sin! 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 It's a sin!
Number 9, The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, Mark Twain. This classic American novel has become another part of the ongoing culture wars in recent years as it's continuously censored. But in actuality, it's been consistently banned and unbanned ever since its publication in the 1880s.
Say, what are you doing here?
You wouldn't tell on me if I was to tell you.
And it's also been banned for the exact same reasons every time, namely its profanity and the use of racial slurs. Huck Finn is, like similar works, a criticism of racial attitudes, but that hasn't stopped people from thinking it uses offensive language too liberally.
Time goes mighty fast, and after tomorrow we won't be seeing each other no more.
Though Mark Twain himself mocked the censors for worrying too much about how easy it is to corrupt America's youth, and it doesn't look like much has changed.
Happy to be of service, your kingship.
Majesty'll do.
Number 8, 1984, George Orwell. First published in 1949, 1984 might be the most famous work of dystopian fiction ever written.
Shout! Shout! Shout out his name!
In it, Orwell explores a future version of Britain, part of a vast Eurasian continent, where everybody is spied on by an entity called Big Brother, and anybody suspected of subversion is detained and re-educated by the Thought Police. 1984 and Animal Farm are both commentaries on Stalinism and the Soviet Union, which is what got them banned in the Soviet bloc.
From the age of Big Brother, from the age of the Thought Police, from a dead man, greetings.
But weirdly enough, 1984 came under fire in Florida in the very decade of its setting for being pro-communist. So it was banned for being against communism and in favor of communism all at once.
In principle, the war effort is always planned to keep society on the brink of starvation.
Number 7, And Tango Makes Three, Justin Richardson and Peter Parnell.
And as part of our zoo promotion, we are going to give them a marriage ceremony.
A controversy so ridiculous, it was even lampooned in Parks and Recreation. In 1999, Central Park Zoo hit the headlines for daring to support the attempts of 2 gay penguins to build a family. The penguins, Roy and Silo, formed a pair bond and were given an egg by the zookeepers from a penguin pair who weren't fit to be parents. This heartwarming tale was made into a children's picture book, prompting no small number of pearl-clutching Americans to ban it up and down the U.S. for pushing the gay agenda and featuring themes they didn't think children should be faced with. Regardless, the book remains popular and beloved by many. Number 6, American Psycho, Bret Easton Ellis.
Is that a gram? New card. What do you think?
Like A Clockwork Orange, the movie adaptation is more well-known than the book, but unlike A Clockwork Orange, the novel gained backlash for being too violent rather than not quite violent enough. The story follows Patrick Bateman, a Wall Street executive turned serial killer who spends all the downtime from his murders making reservations and taking drugs.
Is that a raincoat? Yes, it is!
It's easy to see why the novel is contentious, and it's been viewed by many as a dangerous book that could even convince people to commit crimes. The moral panic was so significant around it that it was even dropped from publication by Simon & Schuster in the 90s.
I killed Paul Allen. And I liked it.
Number 5, The Satanic Verses, Salman Rushdie. Potentially the most contentious book ever written in the time of its publication, the Satanic Verses caused outrage among millions of people. This was because Rushdie interrogates and critiques many important beliefs in Islam, which led to large protests, particularly in Britain in the late 80s. Shockingly, the leader of Iran at the time called for Rushdie's execution, which forced him into hiding for the better part of a decade. And then the novel's Japanese translator, Hitoshi Arigashi, was murdered, while the Norwegian publisher was severely wounded.
The dangers he faces have been graphically illustrated by attacks on translators of his novel, this at a press conference last year.
There are still many out there who haven't forgiven Rushdie, and it's been banned by many countries, including India and Pakistan, to varying degrees.
Rushdie's novel and the fatwa that followed were described at the time as a dam-breaking.
Number 4. Mein Kampf. Adolf Hitler.
Adolf Hitler's Nazi handbook, Mein Kampf, sold millions during his reign.
We surely don't need to explain why this has been widely banned and relentlessly censored since the end of the Second World War in an effort to stop Hitler's ideology from spreading any further. It's been banned most predominantly in Germany and is much easier to find translated into English in other countries.
Mein Kampf's chilling thesis became a manifesto for his movement.
It's a rare case of a book being banned for a very good reason, and it's important to note that it's still available to read for scholars, historians, and philosophers studying Hitler and his beliefs. Nobody is trying to expunge Hitler's atrocities from public knowledge, but the unchallenged circulation of this text throughout the 20s and 30s invariably helped the Nazis rise to power.
70 years after the death of its author, publishers now have free access to the original text.
Number 3. Lolita, Vladimir Nabokov. Unlike many other frequently banned novels, Lolita has remained one of the most controversial works of art ever created, even today. The book examines the extremely inappropriate relationship between Humbert Humbert and 12-year-old Dolores Hayes, whom Humbert has nicknamed Lolita.
You woke me up.
Sorry.
The issue is that Humbert, as a foremost example of an unreliable narrator, attempts to portray himself in a sympathetic light, something he's so convincing at that many have claimed that Nabokov is glorifying and legitimizing this type of treatment, though they too have fallen for Humbert's tricks. There's no denying that Lolita is difficult to stomach, but it's still a masterpiece that remains extremely relevant.
Now get out of my sight!
Number 2. Brave New World, Aldous Huxley. Another of the big dystopian novels, Brave New World predates both 1984 and Fahrenheit 451 and looks at a dark future where the populace is kept subservient not on the threat of pain and death, but by the sheer allure of pleasure.
And it is from our inspired creator of the Model T that we derive our blessed sign of the T.
This society, which reveres Henry Ford as a god, has essentially worked out how to mass-produce humans, separating them into a hierarchical caste system. They're sexually free and take lots of drugs, and the book follows the protagonist Bernard Marx as he becomes disillusioned with his society.
I know you want to help, and I appreciate it, but you couldn't possibly understand what I'm going through.
And it was exactly this unfettered pursuit of pleasure that caused offense.
You seem upset about something. Maybe you've been working too hard, remember? Work to play and play to work.
Before we unveil our top pick, here are a few honorable mentions. 50 Shades of Grey, E.L. James. Bondage for Wine Moms was banned in India for its risque content.
My tastes are very singular. You wouldn't understand.
The Anarchist Cookbook, William Powell. Even Powell himself tried to stop this weapons-making guide from circulating. The Great Gatsby, F. Scott Fitzgerald. It was taken off an Alaskan curriculum for sexual themes.
Gatsby? What Gatsby?
Captain Underpants series, David Pilkey. It's been contentious for decades because of so-called violent imagery.
Tra-la-la! Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications.
Number 1. The Catcher in the Rye, J.D. Salinger. Holden Caulfield is one of American literature's defining characters, a rebellious teenage boy who, deep down, is still struggling to come to terms with the profound loss of one of his closest relatives. Holden doesn't ever really know what he wants, and derides mostly everyone he meets, famously, as a phony. Holden's constant use of bad language is one of the big issues taken with the book initially, though it's always been critically acclaimed. However, in 1980, the book became associated with something altogether darker, the murder of John Lennon, as Lennon's killer Mark David Chapman claimed he took inspiration from Holden's hatred of phonies.
Spiro put him in a holding pen, searched him, and took his property, including a copy of J.D. Salinger's The Catcher in the Rye.
Do you agree with our picks? Check out this other recent clip from WatchMojo, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.